This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Welcome to Island Treasures, a place for caregivers to hear encouragement from other caregivers, who by sharing their experiences offer helpful information and resources for your caregiving journey. This podcast is brought to you by Alongside Caregiver Consulting, and I'm your host and caregiver consultant, Alison Van Schie from beautiful Vancouver Island in British Columbia, Canada. My guest today is a speaker, advocate, mentor, perspective reframer, and author who was introduced early in her life to caregiving. She prioritized caring for her mother, which meant putting her own priorities on hold. When she did start her family, she found herself full-on caregiving again, as one of her sons has severe autism. From her caregiving journey, she has gleaned wisdom and insights on how to overcome overwhelm, as every step of her journey requires changing the narrative. She has so much to share with us today, so join me now as I welcome Heidi Rome. Welcome, Heidi. This is awesome that you can join me today on the Island Treasures podcast for caregivers.
Oh, thank you so much, Allison. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So I know you've got a lot to share, so let's get started with your caregiving story.
Well, my caregiving story begins with earlier in my life. There was actually a prelude in that my mother almost died when I was 4 years old, and I took it upon myself at that moment. I actually remember deciding that it was my job to keep her alive and okay. And I did my best and was very successful until she died when I was 30 years old. But until then, it really was focused on caregiving for her. So that was I see in hindsight, of course, in the context of looking back over one's life, that was the prep for the next caregiving challenge in my life, which was when I had my second son, Ethan, who has severe autism. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole other, to this moment, caregiving story.
Oh, thank you. That's quite the introduction you had to caregiving, and what a responsibility placed on you as such a young person.
Yes, I placed it upon myself, I think, although who knows if Mom did at some point unconsciously. But yes, I did take on that role because at that time, I remember visiting her in the hospital because they didn't think she would live the night, and bringing her a rose. And something they didn't think she would live, but they gave her some antibiotics. Something worked to keep her going. And I always took full credit in my own mind that it was my giving her the rose that saved her. So I had taken that mindset on of, wow, how powerful I am. And I would, think back on that when things got tough of, well, yeah, this is my job and I'm so good at it and I'll just keep going. So yeah, that was the beginning. And it had its ups and downs because it's a tough job. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of resentment as a child. Hey, aren't I the one who's supposed to be taken care of? So it had its pluses and minuses. And then, yes, I thought I had paid my dues in that arena and had made my own bargain with God. Okay, one day it will be my turn. And Then I went on to have, and I started late, got married late because of, I think, the whole lifelong caregiving journey with mom. I never really fully developed myself, my own being, my own priorities, and my own life. And when she did pass, I had to figure out who I was in relationship to me as opposed to a sick mom. So when I did have my own family and ran to catch up to do that and kind of got in under the wire of, yeah, I had my own kid, with the biological clock, gong, gong, gong. When I had two sons. My first guy, Eric, thank goodness, neurotypical, fine. But then with Ethan, 2.5 years later, it became clear very quickly that he was not meeting milestones and ultimately was diagnosed with severe autism, meaning he has very little spoken language and has some major behaviors. So I was extremely angry at this. I felt I had paid my dues. What was God thinking? God had reneged. This was all in my own mind. Reneged on the deal, I took care of mom. Now it's my turn. And did I really have to, in my prayers for family, did I really have to make it clear that I meant a kid without autism? Where did that come from? There was a lot of grief around that diagnosis. So I think that the caregiving journey, it would be disingenuous of me not to admit to you that along with the love of a child, there's also tremendous grief over the dream that has been destroyed. Yeah. So there is a lot of the negative emotion that comes with dealing with the realization and ultimately the acceptance of things are not as I had hoped they would be.
And you're looking back at this now, like you've been in this role for a long time.
Yes. Eric is 20, my older guy, and Ethan is 17.
Yeah.
So yes. And I will say, with the ups and downs, Ethan has been an amazing teacher to me about me.
I love that. Your immediate takeaway is that you're learning and he's teaching, and
Absolutely.
you're caregiving.
I am. I will be caregiving for the rest of my life because I'm open to miracles. He is continuing to grow and mature, and he continues to have profound autism. Given that, it looks like I will be very involved in his care for the rest of my life. He will, God willing, outlive me. And therefore, part of my caregiving responsibility now is looking ahead to what will replace me when I am no longer here for him for the rest of his life, for him to be fully cared for, protected, and all the things that mom does now.
Mom does now. Mom does a lot. So do both of your boys still live at home?
No. Well, Eric is home for the summer vacation. He's going into his junior year of college, and he's living away for that.
Okay.
We'll see what happens, where we know a lot of college kids do come back, but for now he's on a trajectory, college, and who knows what comes beyond that. Ethan is at a residential placement for kids with severe autism. Things had gotten very dangerous at home. He was harming himself. He was harming us. There were holes in the walls of the house from him putting his head into the walls, into the beams of the house. And I repair them, and only for him to just put his head through again. And maybe for another day, but to talk about severe autism. This is the end of the spectrum, the other end. I think there's a lot of publicity and public awareness and movies and TV shows about autism, the end where the issue is mostly the social awkwardness and the social issues. And yet many people with autism, well, across the spectrum, have tremendous intellectual gifts. And we tend to see in the media, movies and so on, that focus on that and that end. So, and talk about Albert Einstein and Leonardo da Vinci and Elon Musk and people who have identified as being on the spectrum. However, these are people who are highly functional in life. People like Ethan tend to be the folks who are locked away in basements, nowhere for them to go. Many years ago, the institutions like Willowbrook were closed down because of terrible abuse. People were locked in there and treated horribly, and those places had to end. However, there was never the replacement. Where were these folks who need high support, who cannot live independently? Where would they go? And there has never been a replacement for that. And so ad hoc, desperate families are pulling together. Okay, they'll create a group home, but then the parent has to be extremely involved because they can't be independent. They can't be left alone. And there's a 24/7 need for extra support. So the family ends up providing that 24/7, and the responsibility still is on them, even as they're aging. So there are very, very few places that are actually systems for more than 4 people or 6 people where they understand that this end of the spectrum needs community. And it is shifting. The law is beginning to relax in response to parents' demands. You know, it's not all or nothing. It's not institution or group home. There is that middle ground, which is what I'm advocating for, to have community, supportive community, have staff live there, have people be in groups, not be left alone individually. So that is really the future for the severe end, is creating these communities that understand their need and don't put them under the umbrella of the higher functioning end of inclusion, because inclusion for them doesn't work. If you put them with people who are typical, no one's going to want to be with them. It'll be oil and water. So for another time, that has been a real caregiving challenge for our community. And the opportunity now, and thank you for inviting me here, is to spread the word, to build awareness of this end of the spectrum that continues to need tremendous support beyond childhood, beyond what the schools can provide, and into adulthood for the rest of their lives.
So when Ethan turns 21, do things change for him in where he's placed?
Depending on the state he's now, I'm in New Jersey, the school is in Massachusetts, and the laws here say he can continue in the school setting and be supported by the school district until he turns 22. 21 is the marker where it's called falling off the cliff. And that's the term that it's referred by, because all the supports go away, because he's no longer that protected population of being a child, a special needs child. And the laws change, the funding changes, the world changes at 21. And that's why I'm already beginning my own investigation and creation of what will be needed for him for when he turns 21, because it's not an option for him to come home.
Right.
He wouldn't be safe. We wouldn't be safe.
Yeah. Yeah. And safety is always a priority. Like, we have to be realistic with the safety. And you say, like, he would bang his head into the wall, you'd repair the wall, he'd do it again. That's his communication, right? Because he doesn't have words. So he's
Correct.
using actions and behaviors.
Well, Allison, thank you for saying that, because I now do speaking I'm working on a program now with the why. And what I teach to staff and to communities is that what you just said, behavior is communication. When you have a population who does not have the ability to speak or otherwise communicate, their behavior has to be the only thing they have left to communicate that their needs are not being met. Now, the fact is, for every human being, actually for every living creature, behavior is communication, because every behavior reflects a need. And there's a reason for its existence. If there was not a reason for the behavior would not exist. So every behavior, if we become a sleuth, we can look at and say, what does that mean? Why is it happening? What is the message in that behavior that I have the opportunity to decipher, to understand? How do I meet the need? Because I talk about coming from a loving place as opposed to a fear-based place. Love will ask two questions. What is needed now in this moment? And how can I be of service? And when that becomes our intention and our motivation and our approach when dealing with perhaps behaviors that we don't love, like a meltdown, like an acting out of in some way, we remember the person is not giving us a hard time. The person is having a hard time. So we then can move into compassion and curiosity in what's going on and begin to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem.
And that sounds wonderful. But when you're in the midst of it and the emotions are whirling around, it's hard to do.
Yes. Well, part of why it's hard is that we forget that those questions apply to the whole ecosystem. Everyone in that dynamic, not only the person with autism or the special need, everyone, including the caregiver. What does the caregiver need?
Right.
How can we be of service to the caregiver? What do I need? How can I be of service to myself so that I can then fortify myself and be of service to anyone else? That is the critical thing. And that's why I've actually developed a number of skill sets and awarenesses. When you remember, how can I expect co-regulation and calming down and equilibrium if I'm out of whack? If my self-talk is, I'm screwing this up, this is terrible, am I going to get fired because I don't know what to do now? Let's remember that that caregiver, that teacher, has to take a breath themselves first. Speak kindly to themselves first. Yes, I've got this. I'm doing the best I can. Oh, I'm so glad this person has me here to keep him safe. I'm not perfect, but I'm darn good. And I'm here and I'm going to do whatever I can do. Speak kindly first. And then you bring in the other people who might be there, if it's kids in a class, if it's other staff, you enlist their help. Hey guys, tough time. Our friend needs help. Everyone else, we're going to send love right now. We shift out of victim helpless mode into empowered friend, courage, love mode. Okay, everyone take a breath. This is tough. We don't know what to do. So we start with breathing. We start with calming. We start with sending love. And guess what? When we do that, solutions start showing up. Not what to do in 5 years. In the next moment, I only have to figure out one thing. What do I do right now?
Yeah. What do you need right now?
Right. Yeah. And sometimes nothing is the response. Sometimes all you can do is hold space for someone else without judgment, without upset. Validating, I see you're upset. I wish I knew what to do. I'll just be here for you.
Holding space is one of the best coping techniques.
It is for you and for them.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know what to do. What do I do? I'll just hold space.
Yeah, well, and with autism and related neurological conditions, meaning any of us when we get upset and dysregulated, one of the best things, people don't realize this, is not to speak. Because I know when I'm angry and upset, I stop understanding, especially if someone's raising their voice or I'm tired or I'm overwhelmed. I just, remember Charlie Brown, the cartoon?
Wah, wah, wah.
Wah, wah, wah. That's me. When I'm upset and someone's talking at me, all I hear is, wah, wah. I see the mouth moving. And I no longer understand the language. Sometimes there's a delayed reaction, like a minute later, I'll be like, oh, that's what she said. But in that moment, if I'm upset, the auditory processing turns off. And it's counterintuitive. We think we need to keep talking at somebody, but really sometimes all you can do is state the empowering thing, I'm here for you, and then stop talking.
Yeah, we're not socialized to do that, and it does take effort.
It does.
It does take effort.
It does. Yeah. The bottom line, see, the conversation with you right now and for our listeners is not to give them a checklist, more information. Guaranteed, your audience does not need more information. They need just to be reminded of what they already know, what they were born knowing. Compassion. In this moment, what is needed? And wait and breathe, and the answer will show up. And you might say, really? That? Be quiet? Listen? Smile? Hug? Touch a hand? You'll know what to do in that moment, because all you need to know is the right next thing. One thing, the next thing. That's it. There's not a list. There's not a textbook. And something goes on when you take a breath and your intention is to love and provide the best service in that moment. Guaranteed, something will come to you, because when you come from loving intention, there are no mistakes. There's only learning. If it doesn't work, you try something else.
So Heidi, did you develop these two questions? Are they original? Okay.
Yes. What is needed in this moment? How can I be of service?
Yeah.
I will tell you what activated that awareness of those two questions in me. I don't know if anyone else has had the same awareness. Was a conversation that I had with Ethan. Yes, my virtually nonverbal son, through typing. And we had an amazing exchange back and forth. And ultimately, I asked him what I could do to help him on this autism journey. And I asked the question twice, because the first time I didn't like his answer.
Like a true mother.
Yeah. I'll keep asking until you tell me what I want to hear. And so I said, what can we do to help you on the journey? And the first answer was, I have to complete my journey as prescribed by God. Now, that's nice. That's great. It was in the context of the whole conversation, which was already mind-blowing. I'm glad he's fulfilling his mission, his God-given mission. But practically speaking, where does that leave me? So a bit later in the conversation, I asked again, what can we do? What can I do to help you on the journey? And his response was, you just have to love me, and that is your job. The rest is my job to do. Well, Allison, I remember the emotions that hit me, because he didn't say, your job is to fix me. Mm-hmm. Your job is to change me. Your job is to cure me, to figure this out, Mom. Years of dragging this kid to every therapy, doctor, school, symposium, expert, to no avail. He didn't say any of that. And I remember the wave of relief. And I took my first deep breath in 11 years. He was 11 when he typed that. Wow. My first deep breath.
You just have to love me.
You just have to love me, because the thought that went through my mind and the wave of relief was, I can do that. I can't do anything else. But yes, that's my job. I can do that. Now, what does that mean, though? Because love, what does love mean? Love does not necessarily mean feeling warm and fuzzy. Actually, with a special needs person, someone who requires such a level of care, often demands are made upon us and we're not feeling warm and fuzzy. Our job to love, what does that contain? To protect, to guide, to educate, to nurture, to encourage. All of that is embedded within love. So when I was asking myself, well, then what does he mean? You just have to love me. And I thought, well, it means something different in every moment. And I actually did research. I investigate, what does religion have to say? What does ancient wisdom have to say? And I did a lot of research, and it won't surprise you, the common theme is that love is rooted in action and acceptance, not trying to change, unconditional love. And that's where the questions, when I love, what is needed in this moment? How can I take action and be of service, even if the action is inaction?
Right.
It is the decision of what to do next.
Yeah. Like you say, not warm and fuzzy, but really deep and rich.
Yeah. Yeah. Warm and fuzzy is wonderful, but give yourself, though, the compassion, the self-compassion, the acknowledgement. This is hard. This is hard. It makes sense that I might be angry sometimes about it. I might resent it. I might be sad about it. I might compare my experience to other people who don't have this challenge. The other parents who have a 17-year-old who's in high school and going to proms and doing all that. And I look and I say, that's not Ethan's life.
You have a different reality.
A different reality. Yes. Yes. And to accept it and say, I am in a different reality than I would have chosen. And I still choose my life. I still choose joy because that's my birthright. No one can live anyone else's life. I do not live Ethan's life for him. That would not honor him, whatever his level of need. I still have to live my life and stay in my lane. Because anytime a parent of any child, special needs or not, thinks that it's their job to drive their child's bus of their own life, you're asking for trouble.
Yeah, there will be rebellion and resistance. Yeah.
Yes, rightly so, because the boundary has been crossed. The boundary of one's own life. That doesn't mean you don't guide and you might give your opinion, you might do all that, but ultimately they must choose for themselves.
You might keep asking those questions until you get the answer you want.
And then at some point, you let it go, because to do otherwise is to damage the relationship. If you think you have to live someone else's life, that's enmeshment, and that is no longer love.
Yeah, nor is it healthy.
It's not healthy. It's much healthier to ask the other person, how can I support you in choosing for yourself? That's a different conversation, because the premise is you're going to do it. Now, you might need a lot of support to do it, but you're going to do it. And no more, no less. And that's the dance. How can I be of service enough to make a difference, but not too much to disempower? That's the challenge with all kids and all relationships. The Goldilocks, right? Just right. Not too much, not too little. And that doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. And then you get feedback. You're getting too close. Okay. Wait, I need more. Okay, do you? Okay, do you? Is it codependence? All of these are questions. What is truly needed in this moment? And honor that gut feeling and share your emotions with the other person. Don't lie, especially with autism, but I think all kids, they know when you're lying. When you say, I'm fine. Oh no. We know when mom's not fine, even if she says she is, or when anyone says it and we know they're not telling the truth. And when you don't tell the truth, you're sending another message you may not be aware of, that I don't trust you with the truth. I don't like you enough to tell you what I'm really thinking. Now, we don't have any intention probably to send those messages. We're sending them nonetheless.
So I believe you came into caregiving the second time with a lot of wisdom, because you are exploring what it takes to have the relationship, to communicate when there is nonverbal communication coming from Ethan. I think the wisdom that you came into that relationship with really makes it work.
Yes, I think I did learn many important, painful lessons from the first caregiving journey. And one of the most painful parts of that with my mother was that I felt, could she handle my truth? Mm-hmm. At one point, she said to me, she was very upset, and she said, I don't want to be a burden to you. And I felt in that moment she could not hear the truth. And so I lied. And I said, oh, Mom, you're not a burden. I love you. Now, the truth was I loved her. And the truth was she was a burden. And the truth was my life was on hold. And all of that was true. And I did not know how she would respond to that, given that I didn't see a way to make a difference. So I did not tell my truth. And I don't think she believed me, but she did not want to go deeper because it was a hard situation. And I learned from that how critically important it is for a caregiver to have some place for support, some place to express truth. If it's not appropriate to express it directly to the person, okay, express it somewhere else. Get the support, the encouragement that you need somewhere else if it's not from that person, because, and that's fair enough. It may not be appropriate to speak it to someone who is not capable of receiving it, but that does not mean that you don't have your own needs. And if there's anything I want our caregivers to remember, is that it is your sacred, holy responsibility to take care of yourself first, to put your oxygen mask on first, because you can't give what you don't have.
Well, going back to what you were saying about love, one of the aspects of love is protection, and you were protecting your mom from what you didn't think she was able to take.
Yes.
So you were loving her.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability.
Thank you. Well, my mother was a very kind woman. And I like to think that was one of her gifts to me. I learned that from her, and I witnessed her being kind to so many people. And I had compassion for her. I wish now I had had more compassion for myself.
Ooh, speaking of deep.
Yeah.
Self-compassion is hard.
Yes. Yes. And that, again, thanks to Mom and thanks to Ethan, one of the things now again that I say to people is, please honor and take care of yourself. Have compassion for yourself, for the teacher in any given moment who's upset, for a doctor who's upset, for the other kids in the class or the other people in the program. We're all human beings, and we're all responding to our friend who's on the floor, kicking and screaming and thrashing in distress. And everyone is in distress at that moment, and everyone requires love and compassion. And as the leader of the caregiving team, it is our responsibility to say, okay, I'm going to take a breath and I'm going to calm down. And I'm going to take the hands of whoever I can take the hands of and say, let's move through this. We're going to come through to the other side, and let's all help each other in community to get there. Because we're not alone. We feel alone, and fear tells us we're alone. But when we breathe and go, oh, wait, I'm not alone. I have community. I have resources. I have friends that I can ask for help. And that is a huge reminder for people. Ask for help. And I'm going to add a piece, though. I think we've all heard, we caregivers have all heard, ask for help, ask for help, ask for help, ask for help. And I do ask for help, and I don't get it. Or I do ask for help and there isn't any, because they're missing a very important piece. Ask for help from the right people. Ask for help from people or resources who can help you, who want to help you, have the ability to help you, have the desire to help you. Because how many of us ask for help from the nearest person, the most convenient person, and then we're disappointed if they can't help or they don't know what to do? So take that extra moment to say, I can ask for help from so-and-so, but what do I think I'm going to get back? Can they do it? Those of us who have autistic kids, most of us, in my conversations with countless people, we share an experience that after the diagnosis and after living not too long with a child with behaviors or issues, people disappear. People you thought were good friends, even relatives, all of a sudden you don't hear from them anymore. You're not invited for the holiday, or you're not invited to the dinner or the whatever. And it's not that they're evil or bad. They just often don't know what to do or how to be. And at the same time that there are people who disappear, angels show up.
Mm-hmm.
Help shows up. Resources show up. Guidance shows up that you would never have expected. And that's the silver lining of caregiving. The wonderful, wonderful, wonderful humans who show up when they don't have to, but they're drawn to, they want to, they're called to. And those are the people we all learn to cherish.
So Heidi, speaking of silver linings and folks who show up for caregivers, what are the resources you now provide for caregivers?
Oh, thank you for that beautiful question. I have written a book based on my experiences with Ethan and the learning about myself. Yes, I learned about Ethan, but he is an amazing reflection of me and the awarenesses around that. So the name of my book is You Just Have to Love Me, Mothering Instructions from My Autistic Child. And it's available on Amazon. And I share in that the key lessons that we've touched upon today. Where I'm focusing now, it is, of course, always about being of service to the moms out there, the other moms, the parents of severely autistic kids, and letting them know they're not alone, letting them know that the drive to fix and cure and help is understandable. It's part of their healing process. It's part of their grief process. And there's no judgment in that. And they're invited, though, to realize that their job, as Ethan explained to me, is not to fix their child, but in fact to accept and love them for who they are, and not to think the common misconception that acceptance is giving up. They're two very different concepts that get conflated. You can accept a human being for who they are and continue to seek out what's in their best interest, help them become the best version of who they are. And that is every parent's job, whether it's a special needs child or not. Help your child be their best self. And that's also our job for our own inner child and our own lives to be our own best selves, and allow this challenge to direct our focused attention and our actions. Who do I choose to be right now? Do I choose to be victim or victor over circumstance? I choose, I decide, I say, I choose love, not fear. In the face of something difficult, in the face of someone having a hard time or having severe need, what is needed in this moment? How can I be of service? And so I've been focusing my attention right now on train the trainers. I've been doing staff training at the Y and educating these amazing mission-driven people that behavior is communication. And to be curious, not furious, you've heard that phrase. The child is not giving you a hard time, the child is having a hard time. And to have compassion for this child, yes, and yourself and everyone in the room. Speak kindly. Be conscious of what you say, whether it's to yourself or to anyone else, because our words have power. We all have had teachers who have said terrible, disempowering things. And we've all, I hope, have had teachers who have said encouraging, guiding things that have changed our lives. And we're always only one decision away from changing the rest of our lives when we're dealing with vulnerable people, people who require tremendous care. And that might be us, might be others. Notice how you speak. Your words have power. Your words have influence. Choose wisely so that when anyone else, a child 20 years from now who's in your class or is in fact the person who you've been caring for, will think back and say, that person changed my life for the good. Be that person. Choose that today. And that will only enrich your own life as well as theirs.
Oh, Heidi, this is such a powerful message.
Thank you. So if you know of anyone who wants someone to speak and advocate for the profound autism community and to talk about these concepts that apply to all humans, about behavior as communication and to win when life shows up, I'd love that referral.
Well, this podcast can be that referral.
Thank you.
And people can share it with other people who are encountering folks who are caregivers for their loved ones who have autism and are having struggles. I think this would be a great tool.
Thank you. Thank you. And whatever their struggle, any awareness I have from Ethan is through the autism portal, and yet it is for everyone. Any challenge for anyone, because love is always the solution, whatever the question. So whatever the challenge, whatever the medical condition, whatever the situation, when you get rooted back to those anchor questions and love is your North Star, you will get answers that you might not have seen before, whatever it is you're facing.
So is the autism portal a definition, or is it the lens that we use?
It's the lens I have through my own life experience. It is an amplifier. It is an extreme lens on difficult situations. So someone dealing with someone with dementia may or may not be dealing with a young man who gets dysregulated because he doesn't get the iPad and puts his head through a wall. However, they'll understand the upset of obsession, or understand the upset of impulse, lack of impulse control, of anxiety, of fear, of no one is my friend. All of that speaks to the fundamental human needs that we all have. We all have the need for love and to be significant and to matter. We all have that. We all can have compassion for someone else whose need is not getting met. And we recognize that in our fellow human, and we say, oh, that's what's needed? I think you need a hug right now.
Yeah, bring it on.
Bring it on.
So what's your background?
It's so funny. My background caring for my mom was the background, but certainly academically and in business, it really did not prepare me at all. I have my MBA in marketing, which was of zero use.
Oh, I don't know.
Zero use in taking care. What does Ethan need? I don't know.
Oh, yes, you do. You've got the 2 questions.
Now I do. Till I got there. Oh, I have stories for you, Allison. Until I got there and I was dragging Ethan to a million things.
Mm.
And then we were typing with the teacher and she's like, oh, what does he do after school? And I said, well, after school, I was taking him to another therapy and, OT, PT, speech, Tamata's listening therapy and Chinese medicine and HBOT and, the hyperbaric chambers and methyl B12 injections. And should we swim with dolphins? And like, what are we doing? What's next? What's next? And Ethan reaches over to the letterboard. And we laughed like, oh, Ethan, do you have something you want to say? I was in the midst of my litany. And Ethan typed, I'm tired. I was like, what? I remember my breath left me. And I was resisting him. I said, Ethan, this is good for you, buddy. This is to help you, help you do better. And I realized, oh my goodness. And when I would take him for physical therapy and they'd have him do obstacle courses and play basketball and do all the things that they do in physical therapy. And sometimes Ethan would lie down on the court and close his eyes. And they would, the ABA model, work avoidance, get back to work, come on, blah. And I realized he's not avoiding work. He's exhausted because I'm dragging him to a million things. And that was the beginning of my awareness of what am I doing? What's his experience? This is not about me. And my endless pursuit of being a good mother with the moving target of what is that even? It's what does Ethan really need? And that was the beginning of my really seeing what was going on for him.
Yeah. He communicated loud and clear. I'm tired.
Tired.
Can you talk really briefly about that typing board, that communication board, how he communicated?
Yes, the umbrella for it is facilitated communication. It's a fairly controversial method because for facilitated communication, there's light touch involved. And so the accusation is that it's not the child typing, it is the teacher or therapist influencing somehow, what is being typed. And I believe there have been abuses in the past, which is very unfortunate. However, we know that it has been accurate for Ethan because we would ask him questions that the teacher would not have any idea of the answer, and he would answer accurately. So we knew that for him, it was viable and useful. So they're addressing some of the objections, and a lot of the techniques now are without touch to enable more independent. It takes much longer to teach the motor planning, but there are exercises for it. It can take years. It is expanding now in awareness of that for many of our people who cannot speak, this technique has been priceless and really needs the support that it deserves, because otherwise it's cruel to not give people what they need to communicate.
Oh, that's all about accessibility.
Is a human right.
Yeah, the right. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for that. Now, how can folks reach you?
Yes. Well, the easiest way, make it really easy, go to my website, HeidiRome.com. That's HEIDI, Rome like the city, ROME.com. And you can reach me there. My contact information is there.
Fabulous.
And if someone feels called, if something I've said speaks to them and they think that they would benefit from having a conversation with me, by all means. And as I mentioned to you, I'm really looking to speak to communities of our allies and friends who need this information and this awareness. They're the ones on the front, at the front lines, what do they need? What do the caregivers need so that they can be their own best selves in providing support for our vulnerable kids and anyone who requires our care?
Well said. Now, Heidi, what is one personal tidbit that you'd be willing to share today with me and the listeners?
Well, don't judge me. Ice cream is my favorite food, and I would have it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So just saying. And the other thing is that I love craft fairs, and I will chase down a good crafts fair wherever it is. I'll travel, I'll go in the pursuit of beautiful objects that I can't even conceive of making, and I love that someone else has.
Well, I have an idea now that we're going to suggest that there's a craft fair going on, and then while you're here checking out the craft fair, you're going to speak.
Allison, you don't have to bait me with a craft fair. You invite me, I am there. Done.
Awesome.
And may I say, I asked Ethan's permission to share his story because when we had that amazing conversation of God is in my heart and will always protect me, at one point he stopped and he said, we should talk about this when no one is here. Because at that time, there was someone in the room besides me and the teacher. It was an aide who he liked a lot, but was skeptical about the typing. And Ethan felt that and requested that this person leave before he wanted to continue with the message. And so when it was all done, and I thought, oh, I want to share this. It's such a powerful message. I thought, but he was careful, so I don't want to just do it. So I asked him, I said, Ethan, do I have your permission to share your story, that what you typed with me? Because I know how much it soothed my heart, and I feel it would soothe other moms too. And this kid who has very little language, and he had even less then, he said, okay, and gave permission to do good.
The choice of the word soothe speaks volumes.
Thank you. My vision for this, Ethan's message and this awareness is for humanity. And it's Ethan's gift.
Well, thank you so much for sharing Ethan's gift with us today, Heidi. And please say hi to him.
I thank you so much, Allison.
And thank you for the time that you spent with us today, sharing your wisdom and insights. Take care. Are you feeling your own sense of relief after hearing Heidi's message from Ethan that soothed her heart and relieved the pressure she'd been placing on herself to help him? Heidi recognized that caregivers don't need another checklist to add to the list of things they already have to do, but they need compassion and loving intention that can be discovered through her 2 questions as we focus on the present situation by asking, what is needed now in this moment, and how can I be of service? She also reminds us that behavior is communication, and how helpful it is to decipher your loved one's behavior when they have limited verbal language. Just like when Ethan laid on the floor during his physical therapy. He was not being resistant to participating. He was telling her and the therapist that he was exhausted. So if you'd like to hear more, consider having Heidi speak to your community and check out her website, HeidiRome.com, where you can also learn more about the win-win skill sets. And if you're in the midst of your own caregiving journey and need some supports, I invite you to tap into AlongsideCaregiverConsulting.ca or Alongside Caregiver Consulting's Facebook page or Instagram account. If you'd like to share your story on the Island Treasures podcast, please contact me by email either through my website or at Alongside Caregiver Consulting at shaw.ca. Thank you for tuning in today, and to Heidi Rome for sharing your caregiving story along with Ethan's message, his gift. If you don't want to miss future episodes, be sure to subscribe to Island Treasures podcasts. See you next episode.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.